Schneller falls free, we're running no SC Schneller. Yeah. Hey, Suicidalists! We're back on track this week after taking the week off. Man, if you only knew. My day job has been making me crazy lately. Literally crazy. I mean that in the literal sense of the phrase. It has done permanent damage to my sanity. And I'll tell you what, I gotta be really careful about that sort of thing because sanity in this head is in really short supply and I kinda gotta make it last. So, I return to you, hat in hand, begging for forgiveness. Do you forgive me? Well, you better, because I got a new review for you, and if we've got beef, then you're not gonna hear about it. So, are we cool? Good, because I saw the Lords of Salem. The Lords of Salem concerns the ultimate downfall of Heidi Hawthorne. She's a recovering addict and 1/3 of a rock radio DJ zoo crew on a popular Salem radio station. She lives a pretty quiet existence with her dog in a really sweet apartment, and that is until really strange things start happening to her. She receives a record in a really ornate wooden box by a band called the Lords, and it's addressed to her real name, apparently mysterious. But when she plays this record, strange things begin to happen to her. She falls into a trance for as long as the music is playing. And then when she actually plays this song on the air on her radio show, the women of Salem fall into a similar trance. And other really bizarre stuff starts to happen. Her behavior suffers. She begins having really intense visions of demons and occult imagery. She relapses back into addiction. And then it turns out that her landlord and her sisters not only are secret Satanists, but they're orchestrating her downfall in order to bring to fruition a generations-old curse placed on the women of Salem, as well as the descendants of a witch hunter Heidi happens to be related to. By this point, I've seen most of Rob Zombie's movies, and I gotta tell you, I'm not really a fan. We are not bros. But back when it was announced that he would be directing a horror movie called House of a Thousand Corpses, pretty much just like everybody else, I lost my fucking mind. You know, I was never really a fan of his music, and beyond an album called Los Exorcisto, which is really shitty Spanish, by the way, I was never really into White Zombie either. But the music, the lyrics, the imagery are so steeped in horror that it made sense. He was always cueing back to horror movies and sleazy exploitation movies that I had seen and enjoyed, that I figured that he and I had a lot in common, and so my expectations for House of a Thousand Corpses were very high. And then I caught up with the movie and figured if I wanted to watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I would just watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It failed to captivate me. You know, I never connected with it in any sort of meaningful way. And then The Devil's Rejects came out. It was a slightly better movie. It still failed to really grab me. And then his remake of Halloween came out, and I thought it was fucking stupid. And that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for me, or so I thought. When Rob Zombie makes a movie, he makes a movie to me in the same way that like Quentin Tarantino does, or Eli Roth, in that I get the feeling that these guys are fans first and filmmakers second. You know, so when he's up on stage, he's very busy going through the motions and pretending to be Alice Cooper. And when he's behind the camera, he's going through the motions and working very hard pretending to be Wes Craven or Tobe Hooper or Lucio Fulci. I fucking hate that. But I could stand here and talk about why I don't like Rob Zombie's horror movies for hours, but I don't have that kind of time, and you don't really give a shit anyways. So just understand that I was very, very surprised by this movie when I finally did catch up with it for whatever reasons. You know, I thought I was kind of done watching Rob Zombie horror movies. But I saw that trailer just like you did about a year ago, it seems, and it was captivating. It was interesting. It was unlike any Rob Zombie movie I had ever seen, and it was probably unlike any Rob Zombie movie you have ever seen because it doesn't look like any of them. It was lyrical and gorgeous and nuanced and very moody and spooky and surreal. This was a new direction for Rob Zombie, and I became immediately interested. I was very excited, and once again, just like I was back when House of a Thousand Corpses came out, I was very excited for it. My expectations were very high, and I suspect that his fans were just as confused as I was because it didn't really look like a Rob Zombie movie. But I don't really have a way of checking that barometer, so I don't really know what the fans thought of it. If you do, just put it down in the comments. But I will tell you this, it's certainly not boring. The Lords of Salem is a movie that leaves me seriously conflicted. On the one hand, it doesn't make much of any sense at all, and it suffers from the usual Rob Zombie problem of awkward, stilted dialogue. Now, you may not give a fuck about the dialogue in your horror movies, but whether you like it or not, you're going to have to sit through these periods of people talking to one another between the bloody bits. So it may as well be dialogue that's well written, that's things that people would actually say to one another. Now, on the other hand, I feel like Rob Zombie has finally found his groove here. There's a lot to unpack, so please bear with me. The Lords of Salem is easily the most visually interesting movie that Rob Zombie has made thus far. It's shot on location in Salem, Massachusetts, which is my place of birth, actually. And I spend a little bit of time down there every October because this is a city that makes a really big deal out of Halloween. So maybe there's a little bit of bias going on here, but Salem's a really interesting town to visit, at least the parts of it that aren't a total fucking dump. In this case, Rob Zombie keeps it mostly confined to the sort of touristy inner parts of the city. So it's very nice to look at. And apart from colonial New England scenery, his interiors have as much importance to the movie as, a legacy of witchy curses and, this really great cast that he has in there. Now, I know I tend to rip on directors who put the emphasis on style over substance, but, while Rob Zombie is no Nicholas Winding Refn, they tend to pull from the same playbook. So right here, Rob Zombie's style is the substance, like I said about Refn in my review of Only God Forgives. And while I hate using terms like Kubrickian because it makes me sound like an asshole, I really can't help it in this case. In the past, Rob Zombie has worked very hard on writing these sort of open love letters to the American slasher movie. But here he's working on something much more British. So while I'm not really breaking any new ground by dropping names like Stanley Kubrick or Ken Russell, because just about every other review written about this movie drops those names, I mean, they're in there for a very good reason. He's definitely working along those lines. You can see where he's going with this. This is definitely his sort of homage, his tribute to pictures like The Devils and, The Shining. Now, while he definitely has some room to grow, I'll definitely point that stuff out just a moment. In the unlikely chance that Rob Zombie is watching this, Rob, please don't give up. You were so close to something good in this movie. There's bits and pieces of it that jumped out at me that really held my attention, but it really falters in other places. But don't give up. Make another one of these movies because I really feel like you're onto something. I feel like this is your niche. You are here to make these sort of spooky, artsy movies. I would rather watch The Lords of Salem than any other sort of bloody splatter picture that you make next. The Lords of Salem has a great cast at work, too. I mean, pulling up the lead is Rob Zombie's wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, who usually, when she's on screen, I'm wishing she were off screen. I find her intolerable. She's totally obnoxious. But here, she's actually really good. She's playing someone who's definitely very vulnerable. She's clearly growing as an actress. I'm looking forward to seeing her in more of his movies, which is really unusual. Zombie has also done something in this movie that I find very unusual. He spares no opportunity to show off her either totally naked or partially naked ass. And while I can't necessarily fault him for doing such a thing, you want to take it down a notch unless he gets a reputation for butt crack like Tarantino has for feet. It's just fucking weird, man. But also in the cast, Bruce Davison. It's always great to see Bruce Davison in this sort of thing. Here he's playing the curator of a local witch wax museum, which, if you don't know Salem, there's a number of them there. He's also a local witch trials expert. He's desperately trying to track down what's going on. He's clearly aware that something strange is happening in Salem. Also is Jeff Daniel Phillips, who plays Herman. her sort of love interest, radio DJ co-host. He's, I know him as the Geico Caveman. He's also fantastic here. But there's also the usual Rob Zombie sort of menagerie of players from other movies, from well-known horror movies. You got Dee Wallace, Meg Foster, who's completely terrifying in this movie. Ken Foray, who is just being Ken Foray. The movie probably would have been the same old movie without him. Sid Haig, Michael Berryman both turn up. But most interestingly are cameos by Andrew Prine, who stars in one of my personal favorites, a movie called Simon King of the Witches, which is a movie that I absolutely had to have some bearing on this movie, as well as Patricia Quinn, who you probably know best as Magenta from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So even if you're a Rob Zombie fan and this movie doesn't necessarily register to you as a Rob Zombie movie, you can at least fall back on the old tried and true Rob Zombie tactic of kind of casting his favorite people from old horror movies. Unfortunately, the most frustrating thing about this movie is how far it reaches to be what it is. He's very clearly reaching for something that's a little more artful. He's trying something new, which is something that I can definitely applaud, but it's full of all this artsy-fartsy bullshit that is almost chosen at random. There's these arbitrary day-of-the-week title cards that play out throughout the movie, as if to show you how quickly Heidi's downfall takes place, but sort of to what purpose? Time is of very little consequence in this movie. It also lacks a narrative thread, which, luckily it has a lot of imagery that's really, really spooky and fucked up and weird, very entertaining to look at. But without a story, this could have been a much better movie had the script had one more draft. I mean, it's just kind of a shame to keep getting glimpses of this great picture here and there throughout it, only to be stymied by this feeling of like, what the fuck is going on right now, It's just kind of a shame to see the movie that slipped through the cracks. I mean, this could have been a much better movie with just a little more time spent on the script. The Lords of Salem. Rob Zombie was so close to making a good movie this time around that I am actually willing to forgive its shortcomings and enjoy it for the psychedelic piece of horror that it is. I'm still not convinced that Rob Zombie is a good filmmaker, but this is a movie that shows that he's growing as a filmmaker, that he has potential to turn something in that's really, really good. I feel like he's a guy who needs to take a little more time with his scripts. If The Lords of Salem had maybe another couple of drafts, this is a movie that I would have liked in 100%, instead of sort of finding myself half satisfied, kind of reaching, trying to connect the dots, to find things about it that I enjoyed so I could come here and talk about it. We'll get him next time, Rob. So what did you think of The Lords of Salem? This is a movie that is highly divisive of the horror community. It seems like we are cut evenly down the middle. Nobody seems lukewarm about it. They either love it or they hate it. I want to know which side of the fence you fall on. Please put your comments down there in the comments section. And also, if there's anything that you feel that I need to review, please don't hesitate to keep me in the loop. Let me know what is happening. Let me know what you want to see reviewed. Put down there in the comments as well. Also, if you've not already, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, follow me on the Tumblr. We have a lot of fun over there. And please consider supporting Cinema Suicide on Patreon. If you kick in a couple of bucks, it would be greatly appreciated. I hate to hold out the hat like this, but your support would really mean a lot to me. So at least take a minute to check it out. The link is probably over here somewhere. It is definitely down in the video description. Just check it out. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next Friday.